Welcome to Ponchatoula Live, the show where we make it easy to connect with the people of Ponchatoula. I'm your host, Parker Layrisson, and we're back from spring break with a fantastic guest. Now, you probably know tonight's guest as one of the most successful realtors, business owners, professionals here in the local area. But I know him as a guy who is fortunate enough, blessed enough to marry one of my favorite people on earth, the former Rhonda Lagarde, Miss Legrand to some of us that had Coach for physics back in the day, Coach Gardner. And anyway, it's Will Frederick. He's a phenomenal realtor, a great guy, and a great asset to the community. One of the things we talk about on the show, Will, is how Ponchatoula, what makes it great is you have people like Rhonda and Rachel Lagarde and their family that have been here forever. And then people like you that come along later, and we all mix to make kind of this great gumbo. So why don't we just kick it off with you telling us a little bit about yourself and your background?
Sure. Parker, thanks. I'm honored to be here. And you're right. My claim to fame in Ponchatoula is marrying Miss Legrand. And so we'll talk a little bit more about her. She warned me not to say some things, but anyway.
She knows me too well, better than she would like. You know, when you're seated alphabetically in homeroom for 4 years, Layrisson and Lagarde go, so she had the misfortune of sitting right in front of me and have to listen to me. Please apologize for me if you don't mind. She and my other pal, Cortana Lewis, really had a rough 4 years in homeroom.
Yeah, that's fine.
So that's a great claim to fame. So we know you because you married Rhonda, but where'd you come from? What's your story?
So I grew up in New Orleans, River Ridge, which is kind of a suburb of New Orleans. I was the oldest, or I am the oldest of 5 kids. My parents, I had a great upbringing, really awesome, family still. We're all very close still. And
they moved up here, right? Isn't your dad here in the area now?
Yeah, my mom and dad both. They actually live in Hammond, and It's funny when I grew up, when I could ride my bike. My mom's one of 6 girls, and I could ride my bike to my grandma's house and 4 of my 5 aunts. Wow. We're really close. So when my parents moved up to Hammond when I was living out of state in college, and I was so upset that they moved to the sticks. Like, where did y'all? What are you doing? And until I moved here, and I totally fell in love with it. It's really been a great place to be.
I can relate to you saying that because the window behind you is Hickory Street. The window to your left, as you sit, is 5th Street. And, I had 2 grandmothers. This was the corner where I'd either take a right to go to my grandmother LeBlanc's house, to Mama, or I would go, straight through Hickory to go see grandmother Layrisson. But riding bikes to grandma's, you're speaking my love language, man. That's cool. And I think a lot of people wouldn't associate that kind of freedom and safety with New Orleans. But River Ridge is really a different animal. I mean, it's out there, out of the city, away from a lot of the danger and violence that we associate with New Orleans. What was it like growing up down there in a place like that with 4 siblings?
It was really great. It was, I would say, describe it as idyllic. I mean, we kind of lived in a bubble. Like I say, New Orleans, but River Ridge is a little different than New Orleans proper. And we're all really close. I'm the oldest, and my youngest brother, who's the 5th, is only 8 years younger than me. So we all grew up close. And I was kind of the boss. Like, I was kind of mean and bossy, as older brothers can be. But we're all really good friends now. I had to apologize to him later in life after I grew up and learned a few things. And,
hey, I can relate. My brother Bree and I fought practically every day of our childhood, and he was the best man at my wedding, and I managed his campaign when he ran for office. So it took a while, sometimes decades, not years. But yeah, you'll come back together. That's kind of neat. Well, tell us about being the oldest, because you say, I think you use the term being the boss. I mean, sometimes it's like herding 5 little ducks. What do you recall about childhood, being the oldest? The burdens, the expectations, and then the fun of being the lead buck out of those guys.
Yeah, my parents are both super laid back people, and I'm kind of type A. Like, I'm not as laid back. And so when I was growing up, I kind of thought I was crazy because, like, nobody else was like me. My siblings, or most of them, except for one sister, is pretty laid back. And so it was kind of, I felt like a fish out of water a lot of times. And so I had some angst, and and I took that out on my family. When I moved out of state because I I really wanted to go. Like we always vacationed in like mountains of Arkansas, and so I moved out of state because I wanted to be in the mountains temporarily.
When you say you moved out of state, where did you go?
I went to King College in Bristol, Tennessee. It's actually King University now, but small Christian liberal arts college. And when I moved, I think my family, we were all really close, but I think they were ready for a break from me and I was ready for a break from them. And it was a really great thing. I knew I'd be back, and, which is why I felt so betrayed when they moved to Hammond. But I was like, no, what are you doing?
So absence makes the heart grow fonder, right?
Very much so in our cases, very much so.
What's it like? You might be our first guest. I can't recall another that went to a small liberal arts, or a liberal Christian college out of state. What was it like going to King University, then King College in Tennessee?
So it was interesting because I actually graduated from Brother Martin High School, which was an all boys.
I had lunch with a Brother Martin graduate today. Sorry to interrupt.
No kidding.
If you know Tony Licciardi, Tony is an avid listener, watcher of our program. One of my dear friends. Yeah. I won't give away the year Tony graduated because, like me, he's getting a little gray in the beard, so you'd be before your time. But Brother Martin's taking over Hammond, guys. If y'all don't know that, it's quiet revolution.
Well, we just, knew a good thing. I mean, the more people that come to the North Shore, it's such a great community. And like I said, very blessed to be here. And so, but it's 1,500, it was 1,500 students when I left there, and it's all boys, right?
Oh, wow. Okay.
And so then I went to a college that had 600 students. And it was my first time in years being in a classroom with girls, and it was kind of weird. I was like all nervous and stuff.
Yeah, you didn't sit between two pretty girls like Rhonda and Cortana for 4 years, so it was a new. Yeah, I bet those knees were knocking on when you got to class. It was a new.
Yeah, it took some adjustment.
Yeah,
and but what I recognized, like I really loved it because I got to know basically the whole school. I mean, it wasn't a big school, and I got to experience what it meant to feel like a well-known person, like to know everybody and to have everybody know you. And to your credit for this show, I think that is such a great thing for any community to kind of be well-known among the community and to know other people, because it just strengthens the fabric of your life, and it's just a high quality of life.
Absolutely. Well, as you know, one of the goals of this show is to connect the people of Ponchatoula.
Right.
Because so often I have a friend on the south side of town that doesn't know my pal on the east side of town, and you just know that they link up great. And when you're at a school of 600, it's probably possible for all the dots to connect. I mean, you think about it, folks, that's essentially like the size probably of the freshman class at PHS these days. And that's wild to think about in a world where for us, the quote little college down the road in Hammond has like 15,000 students maybe. Right. And of course, LSU, Lord knows what they're up to. I do have a comment here I want to share. Your fellow Brother Martin grad, Tony Licciardi, is in fact watching. There's finally a good old Brother Martin guy on the show.
Go Satyrs. Go Satyrs.
I just had to find one worth putting on here, Tony. And, you and Andre and all the other Brother Martin guys I know just didn't make the cut. Thank you, Dr. Licciardi, for tuning in. It's always a pleasure to know you're watching. And folks, if anybody else is watching live that would like to share your comment, let us know. Just, type it here, and Will and I will do our best to bring it up here. So while we're on the topic, Tony's feeling the burn. Tony, I'm kidding, brother. I love you. I want to get you on the show. Why don't you tell us what Brother Martin was like? Because if PHS is a one school town. I mean, Ponchatoula is a one school town basically, and it is co-ed. What's it like going to a school, nothing but guys? That's essentially a college size, campus there. 1,500, I think you said, boys. What was that Brother Martin experience like?
So it was actually a lot of fun. It doesn't sound like a lot of fun just being all guys, but there was a lot less pressure to impress. A lot of foolishness, a lot of pranks, and it was fun. I actually wasn't. I was a little bit of a quiet high school student, which most people who know me now find hard to believe.
Very hard to believe, yeah.
I kind of hung back. I wasn't part of the in crowd or anything like that, but I had a good group of friends, and it was really great place, great education. I actually still keep in touch with a couple of my teachers from there, and some of my classmates work there now. So I keep in touch with them. But
so what's your class? What year did you graduate?
1997.
Oh, cool. Yeah. So you'd have been there with like maybe Greg O'Donnell, maybe the year before that. I don't know if you remember Greg, but yeah, great crew. I knew a bunch of guys that kind of came through a couple years ahead of you. Very cool. So let's talk about the transition. You know, we've touched on what it was like going away to college, what it's like growing up in River Ridge and going to Brother Martin. How'd you end up here? I mean, was it your parents moving to this direction, meeting Rhonda? How'd you end up heading in this direction?
So really awesome. When my parents moved here, like I said, I was upset, and I wasn't planning on coming home to Hammond. I was planning on coming home to River Ridge. And so, but I visited home because I got a job working for Rubbermaid right out of college. And so I moved further north into Washington, D.C. area. Did that for a couple of years, but I knew I was on my way home. So when I came and visited, and I thought, this is a pretty nice place, Hammond, Ponchatoula. It's cute. And retrospectively, I didn't realize what I'd experienced in being kind of a well-known person. That was able to be accomplished much better here than anywhere else,
Right.
And so when I decided, when it was time for me to move home, I decided, let me do this. Let me move here. I wanted to be by my parents. My youngest brother finished up at Holy Ghost, not Holy Ghost, St. Thomas in Hammond, and so we were kind of settling here. And so I said, let me do this. And so while I was out of state, I had started investing in real estate, real basic stuff. And so when I came here, I knew I wanted to be in real estate, not as a realtor, but I just wanted to invest in real estate. So I bought my first home in Hammond. And that was about a year. I closed on Christmas Eve in 2003. So that's how long I've been here. And
I bought my house on 8th Street in Ponchatoula in 2002. So I barely beat you back as a native son. So that's you've been here. I think it's safe to call you a local at this point. 2003, you make the cut.
I take that as a high compliment. I tell you, I feel like I'm from here now, and I really, I appreciate that. So,
well, I know in your industry, you probably watch interest rates closely, and sadly, they're all going up right now. But those of us that bought homes in 2002 or 2003 know they used to be even higher than they are now or where they're heading. So,
tell my clients, my first home that I bought in Virginia, it was 6.875.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
And our parents were, I don't know if your parents had this conversation, but they were like, oh my gosh, you won the lottery. That's such a great
Absolutely.
rate,
Yeah. So, it's like those poor folks that had to refinance or build or buy new in the 1983 flood, when the Ponchatoula area flooded. I was told they were getting interest rates in the teens. So, I mean, we've seen some really ugly stuff historically. You're right.
I was talking to a lender yesterday, and he told me the 50-year average of the interest rate is 7.8%. And the top was in 1981, and it was 18.6.
Yikes.
And people still bought
we're used to financing houses in what might be a hockey game or a soccer match, but they used to be good old-fashioned football scores out there. It sounds like that's scary. Yeah. Well, you mentioned, kind of getting started in real estate as an investor, buying your first house away, then buying your first Hammond home in 2003. Let's talk about how you got started. What was that kind of initial, urge or seizure, if you will? I mean, what gave you the push to head in that real estate direction?
So I like to read, and I read when I was living. So from the time I was 12 years old, I always wanted to be in business for myself. I didn't know what necessarily, but I just knew I was entrepreneurial. I was always starting businesses and little things like that growing up. And so when I read this book called Rich Dad, Poor Dad, which
great read. Yeah. Is that Robert Kiyosaki?
Robert Kiyosaki.
And great.
I mean, it really did change my life. I kind of got bit, and I said, man, this might be it. I was living up in Virginia, and I was talking to a friend of mine, and he was like, oh, my dad invests in real estate. So I met, his name is Biff Genda, and he was kind of one of my early rich dads, if you get the reference in the book, but he's an early real estate mentor for me. And he and I just became really good friends, and he had been the best. And so he kind of helped counsel me through a few of the early purchases. And I still, I'll still call him every now and then, hey, what do you think about this? But so when I came down here, I knew that I was going to be in real estate in some way, shape, or form. But like I said, I was more interested in the investment side, and I'm still, even though most people know me as a realtor, I'm a business owner and I'm an entrepreneur at heart. I love the art of the deal, you know.
Well, let's talk art of the deal and go back, because you mentioned starting businesses as a youngster. Maybe I heard as early as 12. What were some of those early entrepreneurial ventures? What are the early businesses you had?
So me and my brother, who's a year and a half younger, 2 years younger than me, and my cousin, who was about the same age as him, had a little thing called RADA Spy Agency when we were 10, 12. RADA, RADA stood for, hold your breath now, Radical Army Dudes Association. RADA Spy Agency. Yes, indeed. So, and I was, I read Hardy Boys, and I would, I liked all these mystery books, and so I wanted to be a detective for a long time, and so that was one of the earliest ones. And then my grandfather was a businessman, and my dad was a businessman, so I was known to carry around a little briefcase that they had given me when I was like 12, 13, 14, So
that's cool.
They teased me.
Let me ask you, one of the things we love to do in these interviews is seek out advice from success stories like yourself, for people who may be watching, who are thinking either of following you into your industry, and it sounds like you're covering several, from the sales aspect of real estate to the investment and other entrepreneurial ventures. But, what I'm searching here for some foundational bits of advice, because when you mentioned Rich Dad, Poor Dad, Robert Kiyosaki, it's been ages since I read that book. But like you, I remember like a mindset transformation of sorts that took place in some of the lessons he taught. And you can correct me where I butcher this, but I remember one of the things he taught or teaches that I learned through that book was about how assets, and how something's not really an asset unless it's making you money. I always grew up thinking that stuff my parents had, whether it be a boat or a camp or a whatever, was an asset. And it's not really. I mean, like, a fishing camp is not an asset if you're spending money and losing money on it, but a working farm where you're selling cattle that makes you money would be, rather, maybe. But what I'm just using that as a jumping off point to ask the question of, what are some business lessons you recall getting from that book, and or just the early stages of your development? We can dig deeper later into kind of what you're thinking now, but for folks that are, maybe starting their own spy agency like you did, or the Rad Racing Club that the Richardson boys and I started with here in Ponchatoula, for that young investor, I've got a lemonade stand in this next room where I'm pointing for Luke. It says Luke's Lemonade with James Juice for my two boys.
That's good.
I want
Good
them
for
to learn
him.
how to make a buck. Although at this point in their life, all the proceeds will go to charity, but I want them to learn how to provide for themselves and their family like you did and do. So what were the lessons you learned early on, business wise, and that you'd like to share with folks?
One of Kiyosaki's foundational concepts is that idea of buying an asset, and not buying something that costs you money, but buying something that makes you money. So to use a simple example, some people might go out and have a car and buy a car and buy a car note, and they might have a negative cash flow in their balance sheet of $200-$400 a month, and that's just money going out. That's costing you every month. That puts a squeeze on your finances. Whereas Robert Kiyosaki talks about, if you want a car, you go buy a house that produces $400 a month of cash flow, and then you buy the car and let the house pay for the car.
Pay for the car, yeah.
And so it's all about positive cash flow, basically. And he even created a board game called Cash Flow 101. If you want to get kind of geeky about it, but it's like a cross between the game of life and Monopoly, and it's a lot of fun. It's very educational. I don't know if have you ever played it? Have you heard of it?
No, I haven't. I don't think I've heard of it. That's really neat.
It's a great way to teach your kids how some of these business principles. And let me tell you, every time I play it, we play it with my kids and stuff, and you come away like with ideas. You're like, ooh, I need to do that.
No, it's probably better than Monopoly. I love playing Monopoly with my family growing up.
Oh, yeah.
But thinking back, just in the abstract, the lessons there were a bit harsh. It seems like, the landlord was the bad guy. He was putting you in the poorhouse, but you're going to jail all the time. I mean, it wasn't the most, productive concept there. So that's cool. That's great. So the notion of positive cash flow, I can tell you, just as a small businessman with a very small footprint here in my law firm, I can confirm that. That I mean, without that positive cash flow, you're dead in the water, and you're bleeding, and you can't support your family, your employees, or your dreams. Until you can kind of foot the bill. So that's a great lesson. So let me ask you this: do you remember, whether it be the first or any early? What were early business mistakes? And forgive me for going that direction first, but for me, I know when I look back, I just got the invitation yesterday for my 20-year law school reunion. So I've been at it a while here, and I think I opened up my firm here, or opened up my practice in Ponchatoula in 04. After working in the government a few years. So, I know that the mistakes are the things I really remember. I don't remember a ton of early successes.
How you learn.
04, 5, and 6. But the first time I blew 10 grand on the wrong product, that's seared into my brain. So what do you remember as early kind of missteps, mistakes, but ultimately lessons and takeaways that you'd like to share with our viewers?
I think from a general standpoint, Rhonda and I want to get back to talking a little bit more about how we met, because it's a cool story.
Oh no, we absolutely will. That's in my cheat sheet here. We will not miss that. If I miss a love story, I have to answer to my many. The only people that talk to me after the show are the people that ask about that stuff. So
that's good.
Don't worry, we won't miss that.
So when Rhonda and I built a house. We lived in my first house in Ponchatoula when we first got married, but right around that time, it was 05, 06, we built a house. We subbed it ourselves in Weinberger Trace in Ponchatoula. And so her whole family's from here, that. And so we were there. And so I decided it was a terrible time. In retrospect, it seemed like a great thing to do at the time, but it wasn't a very good thing to do. And to make it matter worse, I tried to sub it myself instead of hire a professional.
Right.
And if there's one thing, and this might just be me, because there's plenty of great DIYers out there, but what I've learned about myself is that I need to hire the professional. I don't need to be doing stuff myself that I don't really know how to do. And I was raised, my dad he's very technically minded, and he tried to teach me a lot of that. And some of it stuck, and I can do a thing or two. But he was really good at that. And I really wasn't, and I'm not. So,
well, you're not alone, because I'm the same way. My dad jokes all the time about having 4 sons, and not one of us can change a spark plug. And Dad's a guy who can pull an engine out and redo it. And he built his own cabin with his own 2 hands one time, and he's that guy like your father is too. So that's neat, and it's good advice. My wife and I are going through a remodel right now in a house that we bought, and we've got a great contractor in Brad Perilou, a local from the Beatico area, and he actually did my office here too, which I just love. But I remember when I did this office project, it was the first time I was considering a contractor, and I went to my buddy Jeff Leschere, who had built and remodeled and flipped a bunch of homes and whatnot. And Jeff gave me the same advice you did, because he'd done it both ways. He hired Brad to build his office, and it went great. And then he did another project on his own, and he said, man, if I go back, hire the guys who know it. So part of that's just knowing yourself, I think, right? And admitting that we can't be all things to all people. And just because Dad may be a great handyman doesn't mean you have to be. Let me ask you about that. And of course, we're going to get back to the Rhonda story. We're getting there. I promise you, folks, if you're listening. Shame on me for waiting 23 minutes into the interview to get to that meat and potatoes y'all really want. But you mentioned at the outset of the interview about how different you are from your laid back parents and your siblings. And this is another difference here, right? Where, when did you realize that about yourself, and what was it like kind of coming to grips with that? And because you seem so comfortable in your own skin, so willing to share that now and, share that wisdom with others. But I wonder if it kind of took a while, because, I've noticed in my own walk in life, when you learn that you're maybe different from your father and ways that you hope to be like him, it's sometimes hard to embrace and certainly admit and share. So do you have any feelings or thoughts or memories about that?
Yeah, your family of origin is the air you breathe when you're growing up. So you don't know any different. You don't know the world's different than the world that your parents and your siblings have created around you. And so when I got out into the world, I realized Okay, wow, not everybody's that laid back. And then the next step is just learning to, some of the things you just really don't like about your family of origin, but then some of the things are just really precious, incredible, really gifts, have been gifts to me. And I think I needed some softness around me of my
Right.
harsher side. And so as I've grown up, I'm 43 now, so I've learned that there's really some really great things that, and I've been doing it a long time. I've learned that a long time, not just recently am I learning that.
Right.
But, looking back at first, just really kind of rejecting it, but then also coming back around after a few years out of high school and college, realizing, wow, I was really blessed to have that upbringing. And not all of it fit me well, but some of it really gave me some great assets that I'll have, forever. So yeah, I mean, it was definitely different, but I've learned to appreciate it. And now we still get into it. My family's real close. We'll fight, but we'll always kiss and make up. And I'm still pretty different, and it's a joke still. So
you seem so grateful for that foundation, and
very grateful,
and very secure in the confidence that y'all will rebound from any differences and disagreements per se.
I owe a lot to my parents. My parents are awesome.
Well, I'm so glad to hear you mention that, because as I kind of alluded to earlier, I am a big fan, especially of your dad's. He just seems like such a great, dynamic guy. And I kind of share a similar perspective. I often tell people any faults I have, and there are many, just ask my wife, but they're my own. They're not mom's fault, dad's fault. I mean, I was blessed with two of the best parents in the world, and it sounds like you were too. Speaking of great dads, great parents with great parents, my dear friend Marshall Graves has chimed in here, and he says it took him a while too to figure that kind of thing out, but it's refreshing to understand who you are finally. So Marshall, thanks for watching the show, brother. It's good to hear from you. I know you've been on the road a lot watching that 6'7" and growing son of yours play ball. And I got to say, I did see that photo online of the trip to Orlando with Allen standing next to the 6'9" player, and it looked like Allen was taller than him. So you might need to get the tape back out and see if your son's grown there. But Marshall's been on the show, folks. If you'd like to watch his interview, it's a classic, and perhaps only upstaged by the interview of his own son, who told the story about playing basketball with Michael Jordan, which remains one of my favorites. But speaking of favorites, I mentioned it earlier, one of my favorite people in the world, Rhonda Lagarde, Miss Legrand, as I call her. And please, if she watches it or if she doesn't, let her know. I now get the privilege of seeing Coach Gardner, our old physics teacher, all the time at the ballpark. He's agreed to come on the show here in a few weeks. But I think he was the one that coined her nickname, Miss Legrand, when he couldn't pronounce her name. I think that's where it came from. She can correct me if I'm wrong. But, let's talk about your love story. How'd y'all meet? What gives there?
So it's a really cool story. So I'm the kind of guy who thought you had to know somebody for many years and be friends with them before you went on a date and all that stuff. Mm-hmm. And she blew that out of the water, because right after, so this was weeks after Katrina. So I was doing relief work with the Red Cross shelter that was set up at Emmanuel Baptist, and she and a friend of hers were kind of coming to drop some things off there or something. It was Regina Duncan, Brett Duncan.
Yeah, great woman. Yeah,
they taught together at Ponchatoula. So I grew up in Ponchatoula and then taught there and became a Wavette in high school and Wavette captain.
I was going to say, wasn't she captain of the Wavette? So
yes, she most certainly was. Yeah. And I'm like I said, that's my claim to fame.
Well, that's neat. Well, I know now our classmates are now Wavettes, because our good friend Ben Perrin has a daughter, Lainey, who made Wavettes, and we're sponsoring her. So it's kind of neat to see the next generation. But yeah, Rhonda was a Wavette. Great. She's in the Hall of Fame. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Please continue. So, yeah.
Okay. So she walked in to the relief shelter, and I was, I just kind of noticed her. She's got real pretty green eyes, and so I think it was. I didn't know anything about it. Of course, the guys never do, but it was supposed to be like she was trying, like Regina was trying to introduce us. Oh, I met this guy. Will Frederick, you need to meet him, and I didn't know anything about it, but. So anyway, we got introduced and I started talking to her. I found out she was a high school teacher. She taught English. As I mentioned, I like to read, so I was very interested in that. And I said, so what are y'all reading? And she said, there's this book the outsiders, and she said that I just really want to get. She taught freshmen English. And she's like, I really want to just get my my kids to love to read, and I was like, I like this girl. That's pretty interesting.
Yeah.
So anyway, so we all kind of went out, like a lot of people just hanging out during that time. Everybody was still out of power. And so we had gone out to eat with a bunch of friends at this restaurant and just really connected with her. I was just like, wow, this girl is something else,
Yeah.
And one of my favorite remembrances of this is another buddy of mine who he was married and had a couple kids and stuff, but I would hang out with him a lot and his family. And so after that dinner, he kind of saw what was going on and he came up to me after and he's like, everybody had left and he said, dude, does that girl have a boyfriend? And I said, very uncharacteristic of me, I said, she's about to. I said, I don't know.
That's some swagger there, man. I like that. Nice.
Yeah, and it was kind of, as it came out of my mouth, I was like, what am I?
That's
crazy,
great.
So anyway, I called, Brett. Regina gave me her number. I called her a couple of days later, and we were, we dated for a few months. I mean, we were engaged after I think 6 or 7 months, and married 7 months later, and man,
that's about the same time period I lasted with my wife before getting engaged. After famously proclaiming that I would never propose to anyone I didn't date for less than a year. But when when you've got, my wife, the former Tigerette, not Wavette. When you gotta lock it down, right? I mean, we're both parts of the Outkick Your Coverage League. So
exactly. And it's interesting that you have the same thought, because I was like, man, I must be crazy. I kept on thinking, what's the catch? But let me tell you, 15 years in and 5 kids later, still haven't found the catch. So,
I'm with you. I just had my 10th anniversary a few weeks ago, and it's just kind of like pinch me, And so that's a really cute story. And I'm just so happy because when you know someone as long as I've known Rhonda, and you're as close as, again, you're not just sitting together in homeroom, but PHS was small enough even then that if you're in the accelerated classes, you have the same people in every class, 4 years straight practically, and you just care about them so much, and you want to see these girls that become like your sisters or cousins, really more likely, end up in good situations with good men and good families. And Lord knows you've been an answer to prayers there. And speaking of answer to prayers, your sister-in-law, Rachel, another one of my favorite people, said she prayed for God's will in her little sister's life. And she's so thankful for God's will. Rachel, amen to that. Thank you for those prayers. It's clearly
that was her toast. She was the matron of honor at our wedding, and she said, her toast was, all these years I prayed for God's will. Well, here's to God's will, and kind of a funny little.
Very cool. Rachel and Wes are great. In fact, and it's no coincidence that you and Rhonda kind of met in a community service setting, because that family is so into serving our community. It's no surprise in my mind that the last time I saw Rachel, she was, serving the football team, and she's been doing that forever. And, they just, that everybody's, they take such good care of the community. You mentioned meeting through Regina and Brett Duncan. Man, those guys, talk about dedicated to service in our local schools. Brett and I went to law school together. Dude had to put off graduation 2 or 3 years because he got called to Afghanistan, and he just did a ton of service there, bringing shoes to kids and whatnot. So it's cool to see people sharing those values. And Rachel, thank you for tuning in. You are definitely one of Ponchatoula's best. Another comment from another one of our great local folks here, Mandy Braywick, a fellow realtor and also former guest of the show, a great person. Mandy, tell your brother Justin I want to get him on the show. If you don't mind, Will, let me hustle a little bit for a guest.
Go ahead.
Coach Frank's now moved back to the area professionally as well as personally. Would love to get him back on. So please do me a favor if you don't mind. Shoot me Justin's number so I can call him. But thank you for your comment. I agree. Will is a great guest.
Well, listen, Mandy, I have to thank you for your interview, because Courtney Threaton, who works on my team, she saw your interview and she said, "Oh, we need to get you on there," and she kind of precipitated this conversation. So thanks.
Very cool. Very cool. So we're here with Will Frederick. We're talking family. You and Rhonda got a little bit of love story origin. Y'all got engaged pretty quickly, and we got all the way to the maid of honor's toast. when did you guys make the decision, or was it always a foregone conclusion? But when did y'all decide you were going to be kind of lifers here in the Ponchatoula Hammond community? Because, like you said, you got family here. She's been here, but you'd been all over the country practically. I mean, you mentioned Washington D.C., Virginia. You know, how did that decision evolve and those conversations come about?
So, you know, I don't know. This is where I'd probably look over to my wife and say, how did we? I don't really remember it ever being a decision. Right. I love, and we both really love to travel. I've lived in Colorado as well, and I've been in a bunch of different countries. I love to travel, but I've always been a homebody as well. Like I've always been kind of like wanted to be centered in a really like commonsensical place. And right. Ron and I are just both like that. And when my parents were here, her parents were here, and I got to give a shout out, by the way, to my extended family, my in-laws, Rachel and Wes, Dennis and Brandy, my brother-in-law and sister-in-law, and my mother-in-law, Madeline. My father-in-law recently passed away. Many of y'all know he was.
So sorry for your loss. He was such a great guy.
I tell you what, I'm married into a fantastic family, and I'm very, very blessed. They have loved me, and it's just, you know, they're family. You know, I got to say that, and so I really love being a part of the history that they have in this community, because not having grown up here, I feel very loved and very welcome here, and a lot of that's because of them. And so,
well, and what they give you too is, in addition to all the great stuff as family that you see on a day-to-day basis, but what you may not see but probably get is you get the ultimate benefit of the doubt in Ponchatoula when the town kind of sees you through their prism, right? It's
yeah, definitely.
I know growing up, I've been the beneficiary of my grandparents and my parents, and you know, we kind of inherit goodwill from the good deeds they've done. And it's probably cool for you to be a beneficiary of that.
Very cool.
Let's talk a little bit, if you don't mind, about the concept of a dream home. And I hope you don't mind. I probably should have asked in advance for your permission to mention, but I happen to know that you and Rhonda bought my friend Gary Boutwell's beautiful home. Okay.
Yes.
Gary and Dana. And this is, as I understand, correct me again if I'm wrong, it's a Haystown house. Haystown, Louisiana's most famous residential architect of all time.
Yes.
Built its home. It's beautiful. And anyway, so it's if there is a dream home in the Ponchatoula Hammond area, this is it. So I know that you not only bring people's, you know, dreams to light as a realtor to do that, but y'all have lived it. Can we just talk about that as a topic a little bit, and then we can maybe use that as a segue into your business? But what was that experience for you guys like, and you know, what's it mean to you kind of to put people in their dream home?
Well, I will tell you. I knew that you were a Haystown fan, and I tell you, I feel so very fortunate to live in the house I live in. It's a Haystown, who, for those who don't know, real popular in Baton Rouge, but there's only two that I know of in Tangipahoa Parish, and I'm blessed enough to live in one of them, and it's just like a resort. Every day, we've been there about 2 years, and every day I just come home and I'm like, I can't believe I live here. Ron and I just got back, so every at least once or twice a year, she and I try to get away, just the two of us, and we went to had a really nice little 3-night little vacation in Seaside last week. And, Seaside, if you know Seaside, is very, very nice, and we had a great time. Really enjoyed, you know, just hanging out together. She's still my best friend, and we have a good time together. And so we come home, and I'm like, man, I leave one, you know, resort type place, and I come right home to another. I'm like, this is just the greatest thing, you know.
That's cool.
It's an awesome house, and so we're very blessed, and I love that too. As I said, real estate was always a huge passion of mine from the time I read Rich Dad Poor Dad. Like, I get bit by the bug. And so it's really fun for me to be a part of that journey for people. Our real estate team, we add value by being a part of that experience, that part of that journey. And we just like being a part of the journey. It's not just about a sale for us. It's like, man, I get to see people, and plenty of you know who I'm talking about out there. Like, I've seen them buy a home and then sell at home and move up into a nicer, bigger home, or sometimes, you know, in the aging, you know, downsize and then just, you know, I get to be, and then buy an investment property with people. And I watch people. I've been a realtor 13 years, so you see a lot of people's life cycle in that time, and it's really very gratifying, So
I bet. And for most of us, the home is the biggest investment we'll make.
Right.
And it's also the most personal because you're living in it, right? I mean, whether you're in your dream house or it's your nightmare, you're living with that investment every day.
It's very stressful too, and it's a really great experience with this. So I coordinate. I mean, we've coordinated over 1,000 real estate sales in my career. And so you get to be, you kind of get to think about it a certain way, but we try real hard to make sure it's as personal and as big of a deal for each experience. Well, I had a reminder of that a couple of years ago in the process of buying this house. Man, I was so stressed out. It was crazy, and all the coordination and the effects that go into it. And it was really kind of wild. So I had a good reminder to help. It helped me bring me back to reality with some of my clients.
Yeah, no, I bet you can empathize with them a bit more now, having done that.
Big
so
time.
What's some advice you would give to prospective home buyers, whether it's somebody who's thinking about buying an investment property? Let's maybe take 3 scenarios and maybe you'll approach each differently. One would be an investment property that somebody wants to rent out. 2 would be what I'll call maybe more like a starter home or a not forever home. And 3 would be that dream home, resort, Hayes Town dream. We hope we never leave. What advice would you give to people in different scenarios like that that are looking to buy?
So with investment property, I'll start there. I would say the hardest thing to do, it's a big deal to invest, and it's very stressful. It's very overwhelming. It's, most people are going to wait and do it. And it takes a lot of energy to do. So I would say probably one of the mistakes, going back to some of the mistakes, I probably didn't buy enough rental property. I probably waited too long. I was probably a little too cautious, which I'm not a very cautious person. So I think with regard to investment property, just do it. Just go out and buy something. Now, run the numbers, be smart, get good advice. Don't just buy the first thing. Location. That's for all 3 of those scenarios, I would say, is a very.
Yeah, I noticed when you mentioned you and Rhonda built a house, it was in Weinberger Trace, one of the best neighborhoods. So I'm sure resale there was no problem, Yeah, location.
Well, it was, but that was because of the market, because right after the storm, you remember what happened in 06.
Yeah, that makes sense. Okay.
Yeah. But that, like I said, that goes back to my mistake in the market. You can't really predict. So
right.
So with regards to the market and buying a home, if you're a first-time home buyer, it's very tempting. We mentioned the rates earlier. It's very tempting to think, I need to wait until the rates come back down or whatever. I would say, again, don't wait. It's impossible to time the market. And everybody, nobody can time the market. Nobody can see the future. I tell people that. I'm like, listen, I can tell you what I think is going to happen, and I can make a case for it. But at the end of the day, I'm going to tell you, we really don't know what's going to happen in 5 minutes. I mean, 2 months ago, the rates were 2 points lower. Like, nobody could have predicted that. It's crazy. We knew they were going up.
And living proof that you can do well off that house that we bought, at 7% roughly 20 years ago.
Exactly.
At the moment, it seems really scary. But like you said, you run the numbers and you know kind of what you're going to be making. You can make it work. It's probably a lot like investing in the stock market. You don't know where it's going, but if you wait for the perfect moment, it'll never come, and you will never invest and make any money.
Right. And dollar cost averaging is something people do in the stock market, but you can do the same thing with real estate, because no matter what the market's doing, if you're always buying or selling, sometimes you're going to look like a genius. Sometimes you're going to look like a fool. But the grand scheme of things, the average real estate investment the average home price has risen by 4% per year. That's since they've been measuring home sale prices. So that's pretty decent,
Right. So the first 2 things we're talking about, all these are financial transactions, but the motives are very financial, right? I mean, investments, they're purely financial.
Right.
With the first home, they're largely financial. But the dream home is a bit of a different animal. I mean, nobody wants to go in and lose money or take a bath or get it wrong. But when you want to, for example, if your goal is to live in a Hayes Town home, you've either got to move to Baton Rouge or West, to Lafayette maybe, or you really get lucky to get one of the two around here. And the Fredericks aren't going anywhere anytime soon, so we better target that other one. But my point is, it's a little different animal, so let's talk about that and how that's different. And you mentioned earlier the stress that goes into that purchase, that transaction. What advice would you have for that third category of buyer?
Well, I mean, if you love it, just do it. And so Rhonda and I read Robert Kiyosaki, Rich Dad Poor Dad, and everything that I buy, and this is a struggle she deals with as a wife. I'm sure you know the kind of conversations I'm talking about, but she's like, I was like, everything has to have a ROI. Everything has to have a cash flow. If it doesn't make sense financially, we're not doing it,
Right.
And so, and we've come to terms on all that, but we went and saw.
And she's a mama bear. She wants to have the perfect home for those kiddos.
Let me tell you. And Rhonda she's such a content person. She doesn't want a whole lot. She doesn't need a whole lot. But when we went and looked at this house, she was like, we were kind of just like not really going to buy it, but like, let's just go hang out. Dana Bowell was like, you need to come see this house. You need to buy this house. I was like, whatever, I'm not buying it, but I'll come hang out there and look at it. So a couple of days later, I was like, I called Ron. I said, hey, let's go look at it again. She said, Will, unless you're serious about this house, we can't go look at it because I can't go look at it.
She couldn't take looking at it and not. And Dana's got impeccable taste. I mean, she is just a savant when it comes to remodeling and they did a wonderful job with that.
Very good. Very good. So when we
part of what I'm hearing there is at least the husband and the buyer consider your partner's feelings, right? Because you may look at it from ROI but don't go bring her to that house unless you're going to buy it if she's in love with it. That's a great point.
Well, one of my favorite sayings is "Happy wife, happy life," and actually, I even have I have a business partner. We started a company. It's Happy Wife LLC. So we do some land development, and because both of us really give a lot of honor and deference to our wives, and we realize that they are. And I'll say this for Rhonda especially. She is the reason that I'm the man I am, is because she's really been an awesome wife. And so when she wanted that house, I was like, you know what? Rhonda doesn't ask for anything. She doesn't.
Right.
We're gonna do whatever it takes because that's what it. My wife loves it, and I love it too. I'm not saying it was all her. It's a phenomenal house, but we fell in love with it.
That's cool. That's a great story.
Yeah.
So what about you mentioned about the land development company. You seem to be kind of in. What are some other business ventures you've got going? And let's talk too about maybe what the future might hold, because it sounds like your vision and your goals extend beyond just your real estate agency.
Yeah. So as I mentioned, I started as buying investment property, and kind of backdoored into becoming a realtor because I was like, man, I could be a better investor if I was a realtor, and I like helping people and I like meeting people, and so I started to get involved with that, and I'm an entrepreneur. I like to solve problems, and it frustrates me. I'm big on customer service. It frustrates me when I see needs that need meeting and that can't be met for some reason or other. So I actually was a lender before I was a real estate agent, and I saw the real estate agents, and I was like, man, I think, I don't want to talk bad about agents because I am one, right. But I dealt with a lot of these agents, and I'm like, that's no good, man, what they're doing to their clients. And so, and by the way, that wasn't around here. So, the agents in this community.
Wouldn't it be fair to say, and please push back if I'm wrong here, because this is just my opinion, but I'm of the belief that they're kind of good and bad apples in every profession, right? Yeah. I mean, I grew up, and the priests at my church and the coaches in our community were my heroes, and thank God they were all great men that treated me great. But as a 45-year-old, I now know there were priests and coaches molesting kids from, Boston to Penn State or wherever. Sure. So, even in the most esteemed professions, they're bad apples, right?
Sure, yeah.
Whether it be politics or whatever. And so I come from, lawyers, used car salesmen, we all get a bad rap. I'm looking this way out my window, and Berryland Motors is over there, and Lawton Hotard, one of the best men to ever walk the earth, is selling cars over there. Proof that you have the most trustworthy used car salesman in the world. And I've seen some really good lawyers that are like great men and women doing great things. wouldn't it be true that there are just some bad apples in real estate, just like everywhere? And it is an area like the law or car sales for that matter, where trust is so very important, because
Absolutely.
a bad realtor can conceal information from you that could harm you irreparably.
Right.
And, so am I on the wrong track there? Or, I mean,
No,
because
you're
what I'm hearing is
absolutely
like
right.
the real estate world needs more good guys like you,
Mhm.
Mandy, others, Courtney, who I think we were talking about earlier, Threaton. But so as a lender, you were seeing some of these bad apples maybe, and seeing
Well, and
how
I
things
just
could
saw an
be done
opportunity.
differently.
I
Mm-hmm.
saw an opportunity to meet a need that I felt like the world had. And a writer, Frederick Buechner, is a writer that I really like, and he's kind of a devotional, spiritual writer. And he says your calling is where the world's great need and your great passion coincide. And
Right.
so I'm a problem solver, and so I said, man, if I watch these these realtors, I said, man, if somebody who returned phone calls and did right by their clients, if they got into that field, they could do really well. And eventually, I was like, I just need to go do it. So I have, and then I noticed with rental property, I was having trouble. Rhonda and I were managing our rental property until it got
Right.
to a critical mass, and we started having kids, and we homeschool. So
Yeah.
does a lot of heavy lifting when it comes to that. So so she was like, I can't do this. And so we started a management company. It's Rent Louisiana is our property management company and we manage for over or almost 300 properties right now.
Wow.
And so I'm very blessed to be in business with some great people. Emily Canavier is my rental manager. So so it kind of started, it's all kind of around real estate, but it started from investing, then it grew into real estate sales. And I built a great team. I've got 3 buyers agents, 3 administrative staff on the Will Frederick team, and myself. And we're also looking for another listing agent to help me out with some of our listings, if anybody knows anybody. So, and then, went into rental property management. And then recently I have, I don't even want to say this out loud really, because it's still baby and new, but I actually started a small construction company.
Oh, wow.
Mainly for, like, I've been doing some
residential, commercial, both. What kind of project?
Just basically handyman almost stuff right now. I started buying flips a couple of years ago, and I started doing real estate flips. Like, I'd always been a buy and hold guy, buying stuff and just hanging on to it, renting it for the cash flow. But then I started realizing I knew a lot about real estate, and I helped people buy flips constantly. And I just was like, I need to do this, And
so is there a real estate flip TV show in your future? Or are we going to see a camera crew following you around town?
I don't know about all that. So I mean, it's a lot of fun, and I like helping.
Yeah.
I like making things more beautiful, and it's really been cool. My team, I've involved some of my team members on this, and they kind of help me with the flips. And we're actually getting ready to sell one on Sisters Road that's right across the street from Courtney Threaton's house. She helped me with that, and
that's great. So her neighborhood's getting beautiful or more beautiful, and yeah, that's cool.
It's all part of making the world a better place, which is what I think we need to do.
That's neat, man. I share that. Well, what's a day in the life look like for you with so many moving parts, family, business, et cetera? Are you constantly on the move? Is this all from a place with a headset and 4 computer screens? I mean, what's your day-to-day look like?
I get to do a lot of different things. I'm very, grateful to have many people that surround me, and I've learned to kind of get some good people around me that can help share the load. And so usually Monday, Wednesday, Friday are my real estate sales kind of days that I kind of go to the office and more punch a clock. And Tuesdays and Thursdays for right now are the days where I get out and I do more creative real estate deals. I'm checking on rental properties, trying to work on buying more investment properties, stuff like that. But I think it boils down to just prioritizing. I mean, God, family, business. That's how I look at it. So it's God first, then family. And that's a big priority for me. And then business, I mean, I've been able to do well. So I know that, it might seem like, oh, you're going to shortchange your business. But I think business does best when it's put in its proper place. And you can really service the needs of people better if you have the rest of your life in order. And so that's where I've looked at it, you know.
You're spot on there. And, I've noticed, because it's always a challenge in the professional law, the balance between, home life, work life. And, what I've learned is over the years, clients don't begrudge you putting your,
Yeah.
family first,
Yeah.
or rather, God first, but your family before them, as long as you're getting things done. Like you say, return phone calls, get it done. I mean, we get more 5-star reviews now than we ever did, even if I'm out of here at 5 o'clock instead of 7 o'clock, as long as you have it organized. So, and part of that's putting together the right team. You mentioned earlier all the great employees you have, so that works. What's your view of the future for you and kind of your career? I mean, if we look up here in 20 years, you think it's a similar footprint with just a bigger kind of natural growth on these businesses? Is there going to be some wild curve where you get into a totally unrelated business? Will you be retiring early when your kiddos get out the house, you and Rhonda traveling? I mean, what do you think the plan is of the future?
My big why, Parker, is freedom, and I
Mm-hmm.
define that as time with family. So the more I can maximize that, my oldest is 13, my youngest is 5, and these are the years. These next few years, I think, are some really key years. And I got this from my dad, my parents. The key years of travel with our kids. So we took our kids on a ski trip this past year.
Where'd y'all go?
We went to Breckenridge, yeah, where
Oh,
I grew
cool.
up going. It was their
Yeah.
first time, and all of them, with the exception of the baby, really loved skiing.
Right.
The 5-year-old just was freezing cold and didn't get in ski school in the right timing, and
Yeah. Yeah.
we haven't given up. We want to be a family that loves to ski together. So we'll see how that works
Yeah,
out.
circle back. That's a tough age, because my 4-year-old, we just went to Yankee Stadium for the first time a few weeks ago, and I love the Yankees. It's just a passion of mine. And these kids are usually into things, and on the right day, he would love this place where he's surrounded by hot dog stands and pretzels and energy. But the combo of it being a little rainy at the start. Now, my point here is, in a 9-inning game, we had to go through 3 really rough innings before this guy kind of chilled out and hit his stride. And thankfully, it ended up becoming magical. But I get you, man. At that age, when they're out of sync, it's tough. But you could go back next year, and maybe
Yeah.
your moody teenager is the problem at that point, rather than the little one. So
Yeah,
that's
I
cool.
gotta.
That's really neat to have. You seem to really have your priorities in order. What advice would you give to someone who is trying to achieve what you just mentioned, aspiring to, having the freedom to put God and family first, okay, but also maybe hasn't hit the level of success you have yet, and has bill. I mean, everybody's got bills to pay. I mean, you've been extraordinarily successful, but now you live in this tremendous home. So I mean, there's nobody really in this area that's Zuckerberg type of independently wealthy and set, right? I mean, so
Right.
we've all got stress, but I think for a lot of people, they say, "Oh, I hear you, Will. If I had a support staff of 6 people like you mentioned and own properties all over, I could do that too." But you weren't always like that. You and Rhonda weren't always so successful.
No.
Once upon a time, she was a high school teacher. We all know what they make. So what advice would you give to somebody who's trying to head in that direction and achieve what you've said there, but maybe is struggling right now to take that leap and give themselves permission maybe to
Right.
take off at 3 o'clock to go coach their kids baseball team, or whatever their kid family time thing is? What advice would you give?
You got to draw the lines early and stick to them, because I mean, when Rhonda and I made the decision for her to become a stay-at-home mom, we could not afford that. That was not in the
Right.
cards. I was a brand new realtor and a commission-only job where it was a couple of years before it was a steady, anything close to steady, and we just kind of lived on ramen noodles, did whatever we had to do to make it work, you know. So it was not always, oh yeah, I can do whatever I want. No, I mean, it was hard, but we made it work. And Rhonda, like I said, she's a great, great teammate, the original teammate, the original Will Frederick team. So
you can't overstate the importance of picking your right team captain, teammate, first in marriage, because, I look at my experience with my wife, and we're now remodeling this beautiful home, and, it's big, and it's in the right neighborhood, and it's, all these things to like, swimming pool, etc. But, first I had to have a wife that was content to sit tight with me House with 1 bathroom. We're now for a family of 4. She's been cooking out of a toaster oven, believe it or not, for a decade, while I built an office and did all these other things, that were part of a plan. But it's hard. I mean, sometimes you just have to pick your priorities and sacrifice in places that could be uncomfortable, and hope that it pays off. I've kept you a long time here, and I promised I'd get you out here in about an hour, and I think we have 27 seconds before I break my promise. So before we go, Will, this has been so much fun.
Yeah.
What else would you like to share with our viewers? What else might be on your mind, on your heart? Just what else would you like to say before we go?
Oh man, that's a hard thing to sum up.
And why you might be thinking, I'm just going to share this quick comment. Joe Meir has chimed in to say this is an awesome interview. Joe, good to hear from you, friend. And you're right. Will has been one of our best interviews yet. So
look, to God be the glory. I guess one of my favorite, I know a little bit of Latin, and Soli Deo Gloria is one of my favorite Latin phrases, which is to God to be the glory, or all glory be to God. God only gets the glory. So may God get the glory for my life. If I can live as an arrow pointing to him, that's the best thing I could leave legacy as. So.
Amen to that. And hey, guys, for the first time in maybe 70 interviews, we got a little Latin going on the Ponchatoula live show. First time for everything. So, folks, Will Frederick has been a great guest. Will, thank you so much for sharing your time and energy and advice with us. It's been a great time. To our viewers, thank you so much. We'll be back next week.